You were born in Cape May, right?
Yeah.
How did you end up in Lancaster?
My parents moved a bunch, as far as I remember. I think it was New York first, when I was a baby, into Queens, for a little bit, and then over to Williamsport, and that's where I went to school for, I think, 2 years, and then we ended up in Lancaster, so I've just been here since then.
Ever since.
That's the story that I remember. I don't know if there was
About how
more
old
moving.
were you when you got here?
Like 5.
Okay.
5 or 6,
most
yeah.
Of your life you've grown up here.
Essentially, like, I just tell people I'm from here. I mean, if you tell people you're from New Jersey, they're either upset or they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I'm like, I don't know.
Jersey gets a bad rap.
Jersey does, and I mean, some of me understands why, but the other part of me is like, I've been there. It's really nice in Cape May. It's expensive, but like you could say that for any place.
All right. Where'd you go to school in Lancaster?
I went to Wharton,
Okay.
right over by Harrisburg Pike, where Mr. Bill's used to be for like years. And then I went to Reynolds Middle School, and then I went to McCaskey, and then I dropped out of McCaskey.
So you're kind of an all-around artistic kind of guy. You do music and art and tattooing and all different kinds of stuff. Have you always been the artistic type? Were you like that growing up?
Yeah and no. I mean, I've been drawing for a really long time. My mom likes to tell people that I've been drawing since like before I could talk. And then I didn't talk until I was like 5 or something because I was too busy like drawing on the walls and all over everything. I don't know how much of that is true, but yeah, I've liked it for as long as I can remember. I didn't start playing music until I was about 12 or 13, but it just made sense and felt like an extension of just trying to create stuff. Tattooing seems to be the only thing where it's like, I like it, and then I don't like it, and then I like it again. All the other things that I do, I feel really, really inspired to keep trying. But tattooing is one of those things where it's like, if you're not careful, you can burn yourself out on that endeavor really fast. But yeah, pretty much, I get called an artist, so I assume that's what I am. I don't consider myself one because.
No, why not?
I don't know. Because everybody has imposter syndrome just a little bit. So I guess we feel like if we start calling ourselves what people call us, then we're falling into that trap of thinking that we're more than we actually are. But then there's the other side of that where people start to get annoyed if you don't know how to take a compliment. So I've settled on I'm a person that makes things, and that seems to work.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
How did you get into the tattooing?
It was kind of luck. I kind of just fell into it. Like, I wanted to be a tattoo artist when I was like 15 or 16, somewhere in that, like between 15 and 20, where you want to do 2 million different things. But trying to escape tumultuous upbringings and getting into self-medicating kind of led me off on divergent paths again and again, to the point where I was just kind of not invested in doing anything other than fighting the existential void, I guess, if you want to be deep about it. I don't, but for the sake of honesty. And in my early 20s, I kind of just had nothing going on. I was just working at restaurant jobs and wanted to follow in my mom's footsteps and my brother's footsteps and be chefs or cooks because they both did that. My mom went to culinary school. And I started hanging out with this kid, Matt. We started a band together, and he worked at a tattoo shop as a piercer. And he asked me if I wanted to learn how to pierce, and I said sure. And then they asked me if I wanted to learn how to tattoo, and I was like sure. And then I remembered that was like something that I had wanted to do, and that kind of pushed me to stop, for lack of better words, fucking around and actually like put my energy into something that was more than just trying to not feel anything. So initially it was just kind of good luck, and then it became something that I like held on to like for dear life, so that I felt that I had something that was stationary in my existence at the time. And yeah, now we're 6 years away from that, and it's been pretty interesting. Learning how to do things has always played a big part in fighting the mental divergencies that I have. So when I learn something and get proficient at it, I don't really have the ability to start obsessing over it and wanting to be the best. It's not that I get bored, it's just that I want to put more information about something that I don't know into my brain so that I don't feel like I'm not moving forward.
All right, well, let's head into the music then. So you said you started kind of later childhood with music. How did you get into that?
When I was about 12, I used to take my grandmother's acoustic guitar, and I would learn how to play like Green Day songs poorly on it. And then she just gave it to me, and then I kept it and learned how to do other stuff with it, taught myself how to play, taught myself how to sing and play. And I messed around with recording stuff and writing stuff, but never really did too much publicly with it. And I was in bands with friends, like, you know, teenage kids do. It's just, you're bored, you try to keep out of trouble, so you annoy the hell out of your parents with loud rock and roll music, as they call it. I blame them, though, entirely. My mom and my grandmother got me into rock and roll with, like, Queen and Leonard Skinner records that they never complained about me taking. So, yeah. And then I just didn't put it down, but I never really did anything that was like, I'm going to chase this and, like, be a local musician or, like, go further than that if I can. It was just more of like a personal journal, but easier than writing because I don't really have the patience for writing my own words out by hand. I'm so thankful for, like, digital writing. Like, I finally got a laptop. It's the best fucking thing ever. I can write, like, so much more. And I don't get, like, wrist cramps. But, yeah, it's just been there kind of always. And then in my 20s, we started, me and my friends and myself, by myself, started doing music just more and more. And I thought, well, I mean, the climate seems kind of fine for seeing if other people enjoy it as much as I do. And it seems like it's going that way. I mean, it's a little, sometimes it can be discouraging if people tell you, like, no, you can't play this show, or, like, you don't have anything lined up.
Do you have, like, a main thing that you play? Because I saw, just kind of looking for information on you, like, I saw guitar and vocals and keyboards, and you play, like, a bunch of different things. Did you teach yourself all of that?
Did you see me playing the keyboard?
I thought
Where
I
was
saw keyboard
this?
somewhere. Maybe I thought I saw a keyboard.
I mean,
somewhere.
there are photos of me, I think, on the internet, like, drunkenly playing the piano in the city at
Okay,
night.
maybe that
But
was
that shouldn't be taken as I know how to
So
play
mostly
it.
guitar and vocals then?
Mostly guitar and vocals. I play the bass. I know how to play a piano, but, like, I know how to play, like, fucking, like, Hot Cross Buns.
Okay.
Mary Had a Little. If you can give me
So now
enough
on the
time
keyboards, all right.
on any instrument, I can, like, figure out the bass notes and play a little tune, but I'm not wowing anyone. Yeah, it's mostly just those. I do bass and vocals in a band with a couple of my friends, and I have a solo, like, folk project. Some people would call it folk punk. Okay. Some people wouldn't. Mostly it's just me trying to talk about stuff that I think is important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go there. So you mentioned earlier that music was kind of like therapy for you when you were younger. You said a tumultuous childhood. Could you talk about that a little more? Is that something you're comfortable talking about? Or
Yeah, no, that's fine. It wasn't, like, horrible or anything. I mean, I guess to, like, a kid it would be, and I shouldn't, like, downplay tough things that I've been through, but my parents didn't have a really great relationship. From what I remember, they fought more often than they didn't fight. And I could be wrong about that, but, like, when you're a kid, either really good things or really bad things stick in your mind. Like, most kids I know, when you ask them how their day went, it's either terrible or awesome. No kid just says, I sat around. It was all right. And they split up. My dad left when I was about 7, I think, around my birthday. Around or on It was sometime in there because I hate my birthday, and that's why. And from what I understand, the relationship was like pretty toxic, and it was pretty abusive. And my mom went to live with my grandmother, and that was good, I'm sure, but that had its own struggles with growing up in a household with a single parent who was trying to co-parent their children with their parent, and seeing them fight over what they thought was the right way to raise children, and not having any, not having, I wouldn't say not having a father figure, but not having any male figure in my life to kind of guide me in explaining what is proper, well, not proper, but like healthy examples of like masculine behavior from young boys growing up. It was all just kind of like, I don't, put your feelings away and man up, if you will. That was what was said to me a lot. And it's not to throw shade at my mom, like she did the best that she could, but that, messes with kids. Messes with kids so much. It's really hard to grow up in that environment, and I'm sure it's hard for a parent to like feel like they're not doing enough. So there was a lot of I wasn't a rebellious kid. Like, I never really did anything other than like, I've broken windows, and there was that time me and my friend set a couch on fire. It was outside. So things were just, there was this just overall feeling of things just being tense. Like, there were good family moments, but for the most part, like, I just felt angry and scared and sad, but I was not permitted, and I don't think it was intentional, but I was not permitted to express anything other than being angry. Being sad or being scared was just looked at as like, well, boys don't do that. So going into my teenage years, I got worse and worse, but not outwardly. It was just inwardly, where I stopped talking to people. I stopped playing on sports teams in school. I stopped doing good in school. Like, 7th grade was like my last year where I had any grade that was not a C or above. And like, I just kind of lost touch with all of that. So my childhood was early on very rough to adapt to, and I didn't adapt to it. So my adolescence just became what I thought was adaptation, which was really just cutting myself off and finding solace in all the things that looked really cool from my perspective, seeing like all the bands that I loved doing it, which was like heavy drinking and heavy drug use and disobeying the rules at any opportunity, but not in a constructive manner, just in a manner to be self-destructive because I was in control of it. So that was fun. In it, it was fun, but it's kind of like, it's kind of like playing with fire. Like, it's super fun, but then as soon as it gets out of hand, you just don't know what to do, and it's not fun anymore. But by that point, it's kind of too late. So, yeah, childhood was pretty shitty. I could sum it up in one sentence. My childhood was pretty shitty, but I lived through it, I guess, so that's good.
Do your lyrics that you write now and kind of the music that you express, do you think that is kind of like a therapy for you to get that out, or what kind of things do you write about?
Yes and no. I try to put a good bit of who I am into my songs, but I try to make it not vague, but openly suggestive enough that people could hear it and relate to it. And there are songs that I have that aren't related to me at all, and just, I think they sound cool and they're interesting perspectives. But I think they all tie into some form of therapy or some form of kind of critical thinking about the world that goes on around us, instead of just thinking only about me interacting with the world.
Have a lot of like intuitive thoughts. Like you seem really in touch, I guess, with how you feel about things.
I spend a lot of time alone.
You seem very intuitive, like you know yourself pretty well.
Well, I mean, I spend a lot of time alone, and it's not because sometimes it's like self-imposed isolations because of dealing with depression and anxiety will put you in that space, but I have what people call an extroverted introvert mentality, where I love engaging with other people, but I also like long periods of time to myself to think about those engagements and think about what was said and think about how I feel about what was said and what body language happened and how I feel about that and how people interact with one another and how I interact with people and how I feel about it. I definitely had my own version of recovery from abusing different substances, and one of those things that you have to do when you do that, from what I understand, I can't speak for people that are in recovery for things much worse, is that you have to sit and really learn how to understand yourself and your feelings rather than trying to numb.
When you were describing your childhood and kind of your father not being around and the masculinity, questioning, that kind of struck me how you describe yourself as non-binary. Do you think that's part of the reason why? Or could you tell me, but for people who might not know, could you tell us what it is and kind of, I guess, why you identify that way?
I don't feel like a boy. That's the simplest explanation for it. The why is anyone can feel comfortable with who they are. And if you're comfortable with saying, I don't feel like I exist in that range of what's been set before me, like I don't accept that, that's not me, I don't feel it, I don't wake up and feel that, like, then it is what it is. And it can be tough to accept that, but then the more that you get into it, the more that you come to like realize that's where your comfort is, the more it feels like putting on like your favorite shirt that you lost a long time ago. I'm sure there are other people that could explain it way better, but for me it's just when people ask me, what is non-binary? It means, so when we're growing up, we're taught that there are two genders. There's a male and there's a female, and that's the gender binary, two. So non-binary is basically just, I'm not either one. I know that I'd be classified as an AMAB, which is just assigned male at birth, but that isn't me. Like, I know it's there genetically and like biologically, but that doesn't define who I am. And it's strange. There are a lot of people that don't. It can feel like a very performative thing, or like you're being forced to perform based on the way you appear. I think even today, with everything that people learn, there's still this idea of what a non-binary person should look like, which is certainly damning, but it's understandable because people are visual. So when they see what now is supposed to be the accepted blueprint of what a non-binary person is, seeing someone like me who's large, looks like a boy, has a beard, they assume. And I mean, it still happens. I got called he all day by my clients at the shop yesterday, and that was, yeah, you gotta pick your battles. Yeah, you can be pissed off about it, and sometimes I am, but most times I'm just kind of tired. I think a lot of it does come from my childhood and feeling very strongly that something's off and just being told time and time again, like, you know, this is how boys behave. Like, you're supposed to have these feelings and not these feelings, and this is what you need to do. And seeing the other side of it, of like, this is how girls behave, and this is what they do, and the whole time in my head just being like, none of that makes any sense. Like, that's not it. Like, you're missing what I'm trying to say to you completely.